is a whole lot of cinema to be discovered. You just have to overcome that 1-inch barrier known as subtitles. This is that 1-inch barrier monthly podcast, all about international cinema with myself, Nicola Barry, Josh Barry, and Kieran Griffiths. Gentlemen, good morning. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
How are we all? That's very formal. Very formal introductions. How are you? Good. How are you? Good.
Very well.
Let's talk about the film.
Cinema.
We are film fans. But thank you for coming back and enduring this absolute shenanigans that we impart on you. But if you are watching on YouTube, thank you. If you can like and subscribe, that'd be very appreciative. And if you're listening, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, what's the other one? Spotify.
The main one, yeah.
The main one, Spotify. So shout out to my Spotify fans. We appreciate you listening and subscribing and downloading the episode on that. It helps us out. It helps us out to the point that we have a special announcement, I guess, for the end of the episode. Yeah. So stick around. We'll let you know what's going on. But this show's coming places. We'll just say that. We might be on a little...
the bin.
Yeah, the bin. We're trashing the whole thing. This is the final
Thank
episode. If this was the final episode, geez, what a way to go out. It's Josh's pick this month. We're going to France. Let us know what we watched on this for this episode of That 1-Inch Barrier.
Well, I will tell you what we didn't watch. Well, I did.
You did watch it, and then I messaged just both tomorrow. I was like, I don't think we have time to watch this one.
But very quickly discovered there are no subtitles in my pick, Love.
So a French film, Argentinian-born French filmmaker made a film in the English language.
Yep.
Which we thought was French. None of us had seen Love, so we were just...
Well, I had, but I'd just completely forgotten. And
that's crazy to me, actually. I didn't think you'd seen it. Yeah,
well, no, I'd seen it. And Roop contacted me. He was like, oh, wow, you're doing Love. And I said, well, actually, we're not.
Yeah, we can't.
And he had forgotten as well that it was in English. So.
I guess there's the assumption that I assumed it was... I don't see English language films with unsimulated sex scenes and ejaculation towards the camera filmed in 3D.
Exactly.
I mean, I've seen them, but they're just not usually, on a movie.
I don't watch them in a cinema, so to say. I'm not a New York taxi driver situation. That's more of an internet thing. So we didn't do Love.
We didn't do Love.
So what did we do, Josh?
Well, and I'm in retrospect, I'm happy about this because you hadn't seen a Gaspar film.
No, this is my first Gaspar Noé film.
And I believe in that episode I did say, oh, damn, I think Climax should be your first film. So
Start at the top, right?
Quickly, exactly. Decided to change it to Climax.
Yes, so still a Gaspar Noé film.
Yep.
French film.
98% subtitled.
Ooh, yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Well, I watched it on SBS On Demand. Shout out. It's a great service, a lot of movies. And the whole film was subtitled, actually, even the English, the like 6 or 7
well,
lines
actually,
in English
that's true.
subtitled.
That's true. It is all subtitled. Yeah.
So, but what is Climax? What's the general synopsis of this
So
film?
Climax is a group of French dancers. Look like they're filming something. So they're all there doing a dance number. They have a party after it wraps. And quickly, well, not quickly, but they discover that the sangria that everyone's drinking copious amounts of is laced with LSD.
Wow. Now, normally I feel like that would sound like a fun time, to be honest.
It could go either way, couldn't it?
It could really
If it
go
was
either
directed
way.
by someone that wasn't Gaspar Noé, probably would have been a more fun film.
It's funny you say that because being your first Gaspar film, you already had an idea knowing what we were going into of his notoriety as a filmmaker. And I guess he's done Irreversible.
Yep.
I Stand Alone.
Yeah.
Like these very
Have you
confronting...
seen I Stand Alone?
I've seen I Stand Alone. I haven't seen Enter the Void.
Yeah, okay.
Which again, is another, as far as I'm aware, very confronting is probably the best way to describe. Shocking and confronting.
That's probably just a good way to describe Noé as a filmmaker.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Because like you said, I definitely had these preconceived ideas of what he was like as a filmmaker before coming into this. Because you hear things, you read things, and you read the synopsis of his films.
Especially with Irreversible. That is probably quite notorious for... It has a very graphic and extended rape scene, a very graphic murder scene, but it was also very popular, not popular, it was notorious because, and he does this in a few of his films and he does it in Climax as well, he has a certain sound frequency playing throughout some of the films that intentionally makes people feel nauseous. And I think it was in Cannes Film Festival when Irreversible premiered, people were leaving because they were actually throwing up from being disorientated by the sound. So he's a filmmaker who literally wants to fuck with his audience. He does not care about how his films are received. He's like, I'm giving you this gross experience.
He actually cared when Climax came out and he got quite a good reception to it.
It's his critically most received film.
He was a bit upset.
Yeah, he was. I remember reading something. He was like, I think I need to take some time away because, like, what the fuck, people?
Yeah.
Why is this my most critically acclaimed film?
So it's funny. It's funny we're talking about that because when I watched the film last night and then I read that afterwards, and I immediately went, "Oh, that's quite interesting to think," because maybe at that point now that was probably what is like 6th or 7th feature film, maybe. We're kind of that's what we're expecting now.
Yes.
Do you lose your shock value as a director who, is known for doing quite disturbing things?
Yeah.
You go into it knowing, okay, this is a Gaspar Noé film. I know this is going to have some element. Yeah. And Climax absolutely does. Yes. It has very shocking moments. But the expectation of that, and that's almost the same as you coming into your first time watching his films.
Yep.
You kind of knew already you were going to be like, I'm going to see something quite messed up here. Does that kind of affect it where you go, I'm a little desensitized to it? It's a good film, therefore it's going to be well reviewed. And
I think audiences in general are probably a bit more desensitized to that sort of stuff now than they were 20 years ago as well.
Yeah, good point.
Like I think especially our generation that have kind of grown up with the internet and seen probably far worse things on the internet than what a director can get in a film.
Yeah. Shout out Live Leak. Yeah.
Good old 4chan boards. You see a lot more stuff, so you get a bit more desensitized to it.
Yeah.
So I think obviously, while Irreversible might be the harsher film, I think it's going to come across a lot less shocking now than it would have, 20 years ago when it was released. But it's the same as a director like Lars von Trier.
Yeah.
Right?
He definitely has similarities.
Totally.
Sure. For me, yeah.
Yeah, where I think they're both directors who, not to undermine their artistic merit and everything, but I think they exist purely to shock and offend people on a certain level.
Yeah.
I think Gaspar arguably has more good artistic intentions, whereas I think Von Trier is just, a troll with a budget.
Yeah. That's a good point because, like, even looking back at just some of the Von Triers, I haven't seen all of his filmography, but I've left more disturbed than satisfied, I guess, like with an actual story of anything. It's like most recently the house that Jack built. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. I just but it was disturbing, that's for sure.
I think obviously Gaspar's films still have they have meaning behind them. He's exploring themes. They're beautifully shot. Beautifully made films, and we'll get more into that. But I think, to say that he's a director that exists purely to shock people, I think would be selling him a bit short. But his films are generally pretty confronting.
And he's very open about his intention for that too. He's like, I'm going to shock the audience. Like it's, I think the Von Trier comparison's great, is in the sense of like, there's a director who's doing it who's also exploring themes with Noé, and then there's Von Trier, who is just like, do you remember Antichrist?
I actually really liked Antichrist.
It's a good movie, but at the same time, I'm watching it going like, wow, I didn't want to see Willem Dafoe get his testicles bashed in with a wooden thing, but I have now.
Yes. I mean, the most interesting thing about Antichrist, right, isn't actually the film. It's the fun fact that I'm sure we all know about Antichrist.
Yes.
Which came up when I was rewatching the 2002 Spider-Man recently.
Oh.
Have you heard the Willem Dafoe fun fact from Antichrist?
I'm not sure.
So Willem Dafoe's dick is so huge that they had to use a stunt double for his penis because Lars von Trier said that it would be distracting for the audience. What a compliment.
I mean, shout out Mr. Dafoe, sir, if you're watching.
Man is hung.
Okay.
Hung like Liam Neeson, hung like Michael Fassbender. Good for him. Imagine it. How good's that, having a stunt cock, but it's a smaller one. What a
director comes up and goes, your dick is too big.
Where's the shock in that, Von Trier? But yeah, so first time with Gaspar, not for us. So we were just talking about it anyway. Irreversible, we've definitely both seen.
Yeah, Irreversible. It's so. This is the first time I've ever rewatched one of his films.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah. I'll say this is actually the first time I've seen Climax. I'd never seen it before.
Oh,
no, I'd never seen it. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. That's shocking.
It's always been one that I've wanted to watch, and it's popped up a couple of times.
Yeah,
Shout out to our friends at New Farm. They've actually played it a couple of times.
Yeah, okay.
But I've just never watched it. So this is my...
So this is the first time I've ever rewatched one of his films. I've seen all of his films except his first.
Yep, I saw
and actually, he does one after this.
That Luxa Turner.
Which I don't think I'm interested in.
It's 51 minutes long.
Yeah.
It's kind of
like... there's like a 40-minute strobe light scene in it.
Well, there we go. So it's epilepsy on film.
Which I've
cool.
been told because this got a good reaction, he then brought that one out. Because
yeah,
that's right.
Classic.
But
okay, so it's a rewatch.
Irreversible. I do want to rewatch it, but I'm really struggling to put that back on.
It's almost like one of those things like Requiem for a Dream or something. You kind of like, you know it's good, but you kind of, you want to sit through that again for 2 hours?
There's quite a few films that I describe that way to people as like the greatest film that I never want to watch again.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
I put things like Schindler's List, City of God, The Hunt. Like they're great films. They're great films, but they are hard to watch. And I mean, Irreversible, I've not seen it, but I've read the plot.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it's a fun like, oh, it's a Thursday afternoon. I've just finished work. What am I going to put on while I unwind? Irreversible.
So, okay. No, you go. Sorry.
It'll take you a while to get over it for sure.
Absolutely. So, so that's an interesting point then coming into Climax. So, being your second time watching it, you really liked it the first time, I'm guessing.
Yes. Yep. I did.
And then what was the expectation? What were you thinking might be your reaction on the second time? Having purposely, I guess, not watched a Gaspar film for the second time.
I going into this, I thought I would like it more.
Yeah, okay.
Just knowing what happens and
Because that's one thing with this film is that it's not just the mystery of who spiked the sangria.
No, not at all.
But and Gaspar,
and I'd forgotten actually.
Oh, okay, interesting.
I'd
right, yeah, okay.
Spiked it,
I think as well, Gaspar has said as well, this movie's not. It's kind of like it's got like horror elements, it's got thriller elements, it's also got very noticeable character drama elements as well. But he kind of has explained this film, and I definitely got that from this watch, that it's a movie about when fear strikes people, how we react, and sort of how people can run with things like misinformation and sort of that mob mentality. And I think it's a very interesting way to break it down, is that if you strip back everything that makes us human, and this is actually something he said as well, he's like, it's his anti-Kubrick's 2001, where we watch apes evolve into men, and then obviously it then goes on to technology. He's like, what if we strip it all back and we were just apes again? And that's kind of what we get with this film, is that it's these real primal reactions, which are then chemically induced by the LSD. What people do in these extreme situations. And I actually found it thematically quite more interesting than I expected. Because I was like, 90 minutes, I've heard there's a 15-minute opening scene, like one take. There's a 42-minute one take scene, which is literally the last half of the movie. I was kind of like, is this just going to be a lot of gimmicky and like the dancing and the flashing lights and the sound? And I mean, Gaspar moves the camera in this film like it's going out of fashion. It's like, there's no one in a film is ever going to turn a camera upside down again. I've got to do it 20 times in this, which sounds like a bit of a jab at him, but I'm like, it looks great. It looked amazing.
It's nauseating. I'll give him that.
Very intentionally, though. Would you think that, like, you'd say it's quite intentional?
It's definitely intentional. It definitely adds to that disorientation that the characters are feeling. But, right, so Imagine you went to a restaurant, right, and you ordered movies the way you order films.
Yeah.
If you went into a restaurant that served films and you ordered, a migraine with a side of depression, they would bring out Climax on a silver platter.
Wow, interesting.
Like, it is. I was like, I'm going to need some ibuprofen at the end of this. Like, it is headache inducing.
I was going to say, now we've all, and this is not outing anyone, not outing any of us. We've all been hungover on the show, so we know what it's like to be drunk before. And maybe substances have been used, not on the show. But it's like that disorientating feeling for me felt quite reminiscent to things, right? That I won't incriminatingly say, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's
may or may not have experienced.
Yeah. Drunkenness is definitely one. The way sort of moving and stumbling around I was like, I know exactly that feeling. And then there's other elements of it where I kind of went like, oh yeah, this definitely is a very accurate representation of like the fear.
As that starts to come on, the screen starts to blur.
It does.
I noticed like a slight.
Well, I think
hazy blur
I noticed it too.
happening just as they're, and then you're looking around.
I was on LSD watching it. That's probably what it was for me.
That'd be a terrifying experience.
No, it actually balanced it out. I was so calm.
This is so normal.
It basically just looked like an episode of Home and Away at that point.
Literally. I put it straight back on.
Quite a cool dance number.
Two interesting things that I did read that Gaspar said about the film. One was that he really wanted to explore this idea of showing how humans can come together to create something beautiful in that opening dance number.
Yep. Wow. Yeah.
And
incredible.
then how quickly humans can make something ugly.
Yes.
And that duality.
Yeah.
And another thing,
it's very interesting,
in the way that he filmed it, he said that he'd obviously explored films where characters were under the influence of drugs and alcohol and things like that before. And he'd always sort of filmed it in a way where you, as a viewer, got that feeling as well.
Yeah.
With this, he said he wanted to almost do it like a fly on the wall documentary, like you were a person who is not under the influence of these things, just watching these people. So he kind of steered away from those visual editing trickery things to showcase what it's like to be on drugs. And he sort of went, okay, let's just do it, really purely like you're just observing these people being fucked up.
Interesting. That's interesting that he said that, because I didn't get that with the second half of the film. I think the first half, definitely, that sort of fly on the wall feeling is the way the camera just moves around people. We're seeing certain conversations. Like, I get that. Not the second half. That second half of the movie, I was kind of like, am I in this
I think with
them as well?
The camera work and the lighting and stuff definitely add to it.
Yes, totally.
But I feel like there's not kind of like any, like weird color shifts or like, hazy filters over anything. Like it's
interesting.
Like it's we still get like the strobe lights and we still get like the camera twisting and turning, but there's no there's no effects on there. That
I'm
kind of
thinking
give you
of
that
the
perception.
scene where Sofia Boutella is walking down the hallway as she like looks in each room, and I was like, that to me felt like a very totally disorientating.
It goes from red, like quite bright red, into the green hallway.
Yeah.
And then the rooms are kind of blue.
It's interesting that he said that. That's just, to me, it's like, I'm not saying he's wrong because it's his film, but I'm like, my interpretation is more like, as the effects of the LSD become more and more apparent to everyone, I did feel like the film's its visual language was devolving into the state of chemically induced paranoia. And like, I felt that. Like, I was kind of watching it going like, oh, this is very unsettling. And there's still like an overlaying bit of tension at the beginning of the film as well, because we hear the conversations people are having with each other, people trying to hook up with each other, brothers and sisters are having arguments about, who is the most valued person, like dancer on this team, basically. So there's this character tension that's there. But I feel like, it's interesting that I just find it interesting that he actually came out and said that. Yeah,
I think as well because
you're wrong, Gaspar.
Because he wants to be wrong. He wants this discussion to happen.
He's 40 chess. But I think because that last half of the film is filmed as one take.
Yes,
I imagine not a legit one take. I imagine it's stitched together one take. Yeah.
Still, it looks great.
But it still looks
very
great.
well done. Yeah.
But I think because we don't get literally a single second from the halfway point till the end of the film to breathe, where we're not with a character who's going through some, something real shit. We don't get a second to breathe either. So it's
that's a good point.
We're just right in the thick of it. So it's like that tension, it just keeps building and building and building, and it doesn't get a chance to break. So, and that's anxiety inducing.
Like, it really is.
Big time.
This is it's a tough film to watch because it is just, you're so on edge for the whole thing. And there's like, what, 15 characters, 20 characters in this film?
Yeah.
And they all have a shit time. No one comes out of this film better than they were when it started. It's
some quite literally.
Maybe one.
Oh, well, mate. The orchestrator, I guess you could say. The person who culprits it all. It's very interesting knowing who it is and then thinking back to things I saw in the film.
Yes.
And how, not giving anything away, but how central they kind of make themselves in parts of the story. I was like, wow. That's actually quite interesting.
It is,
and I guess we're talking about that visual style of Gaspar as well, in the sense of his previous filmography, and being a French film. To me, I think this is very distinct of his directing style. There's not many French films I've seen that are as experimental, yes, but I think he has sort of paved that way for experimental French cinema as well. I think if you look back, I Stand Alone came out 98, I believe. So he's been doing this for almost over 30 years.
Yeah,
now.
I really want to see that.
Very much
I saw that at the start of that film.
Yes.
Title comes up saying you've got 30 seconds to leave the cinema.
I didn't see that.
So that's very interesting.
I Stand Alone.
And Because that's a very confronting sort of thing as well. So,
it'd
be interesting actually just bringing up while you're saying that. One of the things with Climax is that the end credits plays at the beginning of the film.
Yep.
And the one thing I definitely noticed is that the opening sort of what would be the start of the end credits, but it's at the end, if you know what I mean, is a proudly made French film.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting that he's very sort of, directed that sort of attention to the fact that this is,
Yeah. So the credits are at the start. The title sequence is pretty much in the middle.
Yeah, literally, yeah. Like before
and
the
big
one shot.
The title of the film is at the end.
Literally the last thing you see.
So actually, what you said before about what were we talking about before? Man becoming ape.
Oh yes, yeah.
And
that devolving
and reversing
sort of,
yeah.
It's quite interesting that he's
that
played
is
with
actually
that experimental way. Yeah.
Again, reading up on some things that he'd said about the film, he obviously has a lot of love for like old classical Hollywood films.
Yes.
And so he says he really likes that they kind of get the credits out of the way.
Yeah, totally.
He's like, all right, get that done.
And
then that way when you end the film, you can end it with a period. Like it's a full stop.
Yeah.
Exclamation mark.
It's quite interesting.
I like that.
Yeah. No, I like that
rather
too,
than have the film end and then you've got the 5 minutes of credits. It's like film's over, done.
Yeah, totally. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So in the opening scene, once we get through the credits, the first thing we see is these audition tapes that the dancers are doing. And apparently, again, I've done my research for this one. Apparently, these weren't intended to be a part of the film originally.
Oh.
So there was something that the producer basically said, the film's only like an hour long. We need some more content here. So they did these audition tapes.
Can I just jump in? The reason the movie was an hour long is because the script is 5 pages long. Gaspar got every character, gave them what happened to their character throughout the film, and said you can make up the dialogue, which we'll come back to that as maybe a criticism later on.
So these audition tapes were originally just meant to be like a little bonus feature on the DVD release.
Oh,
something that people could watch to get a bit of background on the characters. But I think it's nice because I think you get to see like a lot of the characters' personalities come through, especially given that we don't really see a lot of it in the film.
Definitely in the second half.
That's really good.
Yeah. So I really like it as an establishing piece.
I thought it sort of opened up on the sort of the themes that the film explores as well in regards to.
For sure.
Because obviously, like we said, that opening thing is the overarching theme is more about how, that sort of the beauty of people creating stuff and then how quickly it can devolve when things like fear and stuff come into play. You get an idea of sort of like the personalities and then as we're seeing interactions with people throughout, to me, you kind of see where allegiances lie and sort of where someone can be like, oh, that person's going to try and hook up and fuck that person. You sort of see like where that the gossip mill sort of can be very detrimental to friendships and stuff.
Interesting to that is, so he wanted atypical dancers. That's what, he didn't want normal dancers, which he obviously gets.
And you can tell that. Like they
look double jointed.
Yeah, quite great to watch.
But also each one of those groups in the movie are actual that he found.
Interesting. Okay.
So they all that group
were
friends and knew each other. This group. So and I really think that comes off in the movie.
I think
like what you just said.
There's a weird unspoken hostility from the start. Between them. Yeah.
But there's basically like what, 2 actors? Like two actual actors
in it.
Sophia Boutella is one, and then the
one who plays the pregnant.
The one who plays the pregnant lady,
Yeah.
So, and then while we're on that audition tape scene, obviously for movie hounds like us, there's a really, I guess, some cool Easter eggs, and this is something we've spoken about. Gaspar does a lot in his films, that the TV, the sort of CRT television we're watching the audition tapes on, very artistically surrounded by books and other movies, which you can see would be direct influences on Climax. I mean, I only wrote down a couple, but I got Suspiria on there, which, I mean, obviously that dance element, but that sort of interesting, I guess, spirituality of dance as well, which is a massive part of Suspiria in a very demonic way. It's kind of is quite some parallels here. Possession on there. I didn't see what it was, but there's a Fritz Lang movie or a book there.
I think it's a book because it's all books on the left and all films on the right.
Okay, interesting.
Yep.
I saw Sallow, 120 Days of Sodom on there, which, I mean...
That's if you look on his trivia, that's one of his favourite films.
Of course it is. That doesn't shock me at all. No.
So for people unfamiliar with Salò or the 120 Days of Sodom...
up on the show.
Oh, I've not seen that movie.
It's a 1975 Italian film.
We know how well the horny episodes do.
I mean, this is a different kind of horny.
This is a very different kind of horny.
1975 Italian film. The director was murdered around about the same time that it came out.
Oh.
I shouldn't laugh, but it's fucked. But it's
wow.
It is definitely in the conversation for the most fucked up movie ever made.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know if it's
Serbian films giving it a run for its money.
Yeah. Okay. I think Salò is probably it's probably the most fucked up film that you could still argue has artistic merit.
Okay.
Yep. Yes, yeah, that's a fair point.
Because the Serbian film just exists purely to say fuck you to the audience.
Gaspar a run for his money.
Yeah. Whereas Salò has actual themes that it explores. But it's a monstrous film. But yeah, Dario Argento's Suspiria, Possession, like you said, Harakiri as well, Japanese film. And David Lynch's Eraserhead, though it's weirdly titled Labyrinth Man.
That's the French
That's
title.
another one of his favourite films.
Eraserhead?
Yeah.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Not surprised.
So, yeah.
I like Eraserhead's good. I like that.
I've never seen it.
Haven't you?
No, it's just one of the Lynches I haven't seen yet, so I got to add it to the list.
But yeah,
you can see those. Yeah. For the ones I have seen, you can absolutely see the inspirations to this. And
he's not a subtle director.
No.
Like he's very much going, here's the things I like.
It's almost like, pause now, this is your homework, come back and watch Climax. Or like if you want to do
go and watch
extracurricular activities after watching this film, that's what it would be on. So, and that's quite interesting, I think, in the sense of like, you can look at the dance numbers in Suspiria and be like, oh, that's very reminiscent in Climax, which they're incredible. We saw how great the film looks visually from a cinematography, a camera point of view, but like the dancing in this movie is so engaged. It's enigmatic and it's engaging. You kind of don't know. It doesn't look natural, and it's kind of great.
Yeah, that's right. It's like nothing you've ever seen.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
I did see an interview with one of the dancers. Yeah. And I found interesting that every minute bit in those dances is choreographed.
Yes. For that first dance number. That's pretty much the only thing that's...
Yeah.
That was
I just find that, it's amazing.
And they did beautiful. 16. They did 16 takes and the 15th take was the one used, I read. But it's interesting because I think having that, those character auditions at the start and getting to sort of know the personalities a bit, it's then cemented their personalities with their dance style or how much time they take sort of in front of the camera or in front of the crew, who they're dancing in front of. Like, I feel like if you watch that scene multiple times, knowing sort of the character relationships and where the film goes, I think you get a lot out of it. Fun fact, and I haven't gone back to check it, but when they finish the dance, apparently their bodies are contorted in a way that writes acid. Like if you're looking top down, it says acid on top, which is quite a funny... Cheeky little Gaspar.
That'd be cool.
A little cheeky
Funny
Gaspar.
boy.
So there's no denying that we love the visual aspects of this film. And
he's pretty much the cameraman for 99% of the film as well.
Doesn't shock me as well. I feel like as well, if you're capturing that sort of like, you know, this fly on the wall, it took him apparently a month from coming up with the idea to filming, which is disgustingly fast.
Yeah,
they shot it in chronological order. As well.
I love that as well. That's,
I always like that.
You know, for again, people who aren't super well versed in films, and you think, they would obviously shoot films in chronological order. Absolutely not.
No,
that's so rare.
It makes so much sense for this.
Well, yeah, when you have to sort of be really, flowing with it and knowing where your character's going in a linear narrative sense, you need to be able to go from a distinct A to B. You can't shoot the ending and then shoot the start when you're doing it so unscripted. But yeah, it was like 4 weeks, and it was pretty much that, someone took Gaspar to a dancing concert thing, for like Vogue and Crumping, which is the dancing that they're doing
in the film,
and he was like, fuck yeah, this is awesome, I want to make a film about this. And then he just gathered a bunch of dancers up, a couple of actors,
it's so good.
And went for it, and like you said, with a 5-page script.
Just an outline of the story and like what happens to characters and where the story ends up. It's kind of like they all got to sort of improvise their dialogue. So
maybe he's annoyed at that. Maybe he's annoyed at the one that he
maybe
had a 5-page script for, took a month to make, and this is his most well-received.
He's like, I just put everything into the visuals, not the story, and people love it. Which I think for me is a good segue then into the story and into the characters, because that is the weakest part of this movie for me. I definitely think the extended scene of the characters talking at the party before the LSD kicks in was probably some of the most like boring 15 minutes of my life. I was more into the character audition tapes and the way they were interacting right after the dance than sort of anything I heard.
Yeah, okay.
After the once
I found some of it I wasn't bored because I was just cringing at what they were saying.
the two guys talk about how they're going to fuck chicks with their big dicks and the chicks are going to take it. And it's kind of, I was sitting there going like, that's Gaspar-y, I guess. But like at the same time, I was kind of like, this, to me, that added nothing to the film. Like these are two characters as well who have quite a minimal impact on the film.
They do. That's probably the main
and that's probably the main thing
is
that like I've just been forced to listen to these two, for lack of a better word, fuck boys talking about the sex they're not going to have.
Yeah, that's right.
Before anything like more interesting happens. And I think my biggest issue with that middle bit personally is that we get such a steep on-ramp with the intensity of the film and then it drops. And then I get 10, 15 minutes of that before the first sort of like instances like something's wrong here kicks off again. And that just affected the pacing for me.
Okay.
The way it's edited was interesting. We cut to black and we cut like it's very it's almost like a strobe for the camera.
Yeah.
I guess cuts to black, cuts back in. And I was kind of getting over that quite quickly, but I don't know how. But for me, the main issue I have is that we were focusing on characters who had no effect then on, not all of them, but some of them we were focusing on some characters who then have no effect as to what happens for them for the next 40 minutes of one shot. Absolute insanity that I loved. So I don't know how you guys feel about that, but
I think my issue with it, I agree to an extent. I think my issue with it is it's a great example of how to not do show, don't tell.
yes. Yeah.
Like, it's like, hey, here's what these characters' personalities are like. Ooh, this guy's a really weird and overprotective brother with some sort of like incestuous conflict going on.
Honestly, that was one where I was like, because at least towards the end, that to me had a bit more of a payoff. Yeah.
But it's like, oh, these dudes are really
fucking
misogynistic.
Weird, don't get me wrong.
You know, and are talking about basically raping women. It's like, okay, cool. Like, I get it. Like, these guys are pieces of shit, but show me that. Don't just have them literally explaining.
Like they were featured the most.
For that bit,
I was like, fuck these guys. Like, I was just getting real angry.
I was, But
I found some of the conversations were interesting. Like I think it was David, the skinhead guy, and Omar, who's a teetotaler. He's one of the few that don't drink the sangria. So he's the first person accused of spiking it because they all know that he doesn't drink or do drugs or smoke or anything like that. Their conversation was really interesting. I enjoyed theirs and I enjoyed other parts of it. But I think it was a bit long, a bit gratuitous. And I mean, gratuitous is probably a great way of, I think, describing Climax.
It's almost being like the movie. But like, I get what you mean. Because in the sense of me, it's like the wrong, for everything gratuitous we then get for the last 40 minutes of this film, which in classic Gaspar fashion is graphically violent, is sexually charged, is very unsettling. It was gratuitous in the way I was like, you've just stopped the film for a second. Like, and I don't know why. This is what, like 95, 96 minutes long.
If that.
Yeah, it's pretty short. So I'd kind of be like, okay, maybe you cut 5 minutes of that conversation. We have a tight 85, 90-minute film that is just...
I didn't
you wouldn't lose anything. But no, fair.
Yeah. And thinking about it, like, does that kind of then make what starts to happen a bit more because you've been almost lulled into I'm a little bit bored.
Maybe. I haven't thought of it like that. That's an interesting point. I don't know. Maybe because I'm just such an adrenaline junkie. I just want like the high to continue forever. But I don't know. Maybe it was just that my anger pointed at those two.
I do remember sitting there listening to them and then was really glad Susie wasn't beside me because I just thought
fair point.
Like next to my girlfriend while watching these two guys, it's like, oh my God.
They say some vile shit.
Yeah,
they say some disgustingly misogynistic shit.
Yeah. I think had it been filmed in the same way that the rest of the film was filmed.
Yep.
So stop saying film. But if it had been like going around to different conversations and you'd been overhearing bits and pieces, and then maybe you'd see someone trying to corner, one of the guys trying to corner one of the girls, and trying to chat her up, and then we move somewhere else. And I think that would have been just a more engaging and energetic way to do it. Like he's literally just stationary shot after stationary shot.
Yes, true.
Of characters standing next to one another having a conversation. It looks so set up and artificial.
I think that's actually, now you've said it, that's maybe probably what has kind of pissed me off a little bit about it, is the sense that like there is so much artistic work put in that opening and that closing, and then that middle is just so blandly put together. The other issue is, and this is not a slight at anyone because they're not trained actors, they're not professional actors, but when you give them that freedom to improvise and come up with all that dialogue for the character, and you don't refine that a little bit in the cut as a director, I felt like I was watching amateur actors, and that's not, I won't say anyone was terrible. Even the two guys I hated were convincingly shit. But that to me, knowing that these are not trained like theater actors, I guess they're actors in the sense of performers and dancers, but that these two guys just sitting there talking about how they want to rape women, and I was just like, you then strike me as like dickheads in real life, and now I don't like you. It's immediate in the sense of like,
they're probably really lovely blokes.
They probably, and they absolutely might be. And you know what? They've probably gone, hey, we're in a Gaspar Noé film. Let's turn this shit up to like 12. So I think in that sense, it just having Gaspar put so much energy into that opening and closing. To have something like that in the middle just really, to me, was like, okay, this to me seems almost thrown together. Which in the grand scheme of things probably was how quickly it was put together. And in the hands of another director or someone who's not as a visual auteur, I guess you can call, you probably would have come off even worse, perhaps. But I don't know, that's just me. And in all honesty, it's like 10 minutes of the film. It's nothing that's like gonna derail the whole experience, but it's just, it was noticeable for me anyway.
I think another director could have made this film, but I don't think they would have made it in the same way, and I don't think they would have made it as well.
It's bold.
That's if nothing else, it's bold. But it really stands out as well when you've got Sofia Boutella, who is an actual actress. She's the choreographer of the production, and she just, I guess the film doesn't really have a main character, but she would arguably be the main character. I feel like we spend more time with her than anyone else.
Especially in that second half, we're kind of seeing her discover a lot
Follow
of things.
Her around,
the camera doesn't leave her
not
too often.
No. She's great. She's great in the film as well.
She stands out, I think, because she's surrounded by people who aren't traditional, classically trained actors.
No, absolutely. And then the other, Sohelia Yacoub, who plays Lou, who is the other actress in the film, the other person who was an actress coming into this, she has a scene that is quite harrowing. Probably arguably the most disturbing moment of the film. And because she's a great actress, like that worked on me. But actually both hers, they're two very violent scenes, and both those scenes had a profound effect on me. And this is the guy who watches Saw for fun. Like, I was watching those moments being like, I was so... And we were actually, before we even recorded, we were speaking with my girlfriend, and we were like, she watched the first 20 minutes of it before she went to bed, and I was like, I'm glad you went, because you would not have liked how confronting and disturbing a lot of the things that happened afterwards.
I think what Gaspar does so well is makes very realistic horror films.
Yes.
Like this is this is a horror film.
A horror film.
It is ultimately a horror film, but
it's not jump scares and it's not supernatural. It's it is the horror of humanity.
And the horror of like being spiked with some drugs.
That's got shivers.
It's all things that could conceivably happen.
Absolutely.
You watch Saw or you watch Hostel or something like that, and it's all a bit far-fetched. It's a bit over the top with the violence. Like it's theatrical,
and that's its point, right?
Yeah,
totally. I'm going to defend Saw.
Okay. No, I'm not. I'm just saying. Different.
But it Saw achieves what it's trying to achieve.
Totally.
Right. But like you said, Gaspar makes violence that feels real. He makes horror that feels real.
Very real.
When a character gets hit in this, you feel like that actor really just got hit.
Yes.
When someone cuts themselves, you feel like they really just cut themselves.
The scene of the hitting, I guess we can call it the most harrowing thing. Like the violence is gross, but her scream.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like I might not just be me, but I just have a thing with screams. And if it's like a genuine, like blood curdling scream, it fucks with my head so much. And like that scene, I was grossed out.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I think some of the non-actors, Romain, who plays David,
he's really good.
Yeah, so someone who,
I thought he was an actual actor.
Yeah, because he
was really impressive.
He's really good in front of the camera,
especially because his character sort of goes on, I would argue, maybe the biggest arc of anyone in the story.
Yeah.
Like he goes from being really unlikable at the start to you sort of sympathizing with him
towards the end.
Yep.
And I think he does that
quite
really well.
Yeah. I agree. And then you were going to say Kitty Smart.
Yeah, he's really good.
As the DJ, as Daddy.
Yeah.
He was great.
He's really good.
He was great. So, and that's the thing. Like they're like considering that these are not all traditionally trained theatrical and film actors. Like
I think
some
that's
of them are
who
quite
Gaspar saw at that concert.
Romain or Kitty?
Kitty. And then said to him, "Can we meet to talk about this film?"
To come, yeah.
So I think he was a bit of a.
Oh, it's done RuPaul's Drag Race in France, which makes having watched the film, it makes complete sense. Like fucking serving right there. So that's what the kids say, right? Serving.
We're young. We're hip.
Yeah. Listen to us, kiddies. Yeah. All you fun little TikTokers out there, go watch Climax. You'll love it. I can't wait to see it blow up on TikTok like Saltburn did.
You want fucked up? We'll give you fucked up. Saltburn looks like a fucking Disney cartoon.
Your bathtubs are the safest place after watching Climax. But yeah, it's to me, I guess if we don't have too much else to say, like it's visually incredible, but that's something we expect from Gaspar.
Yep.
It's fucking disturbing. Something we expect from Gaspar.
It's violent.
It's
sexually charged.
Yep.
It explores themes of race.
Yes.
It explores themes of sexuality
Class
and gender,
as well,
class.
yeah.
Like these are all things that, from what I understand, are pretty common threads through his films.
Like class is especially one in I Stand Alone because we follow like a poor butcher and is sort of like that movie's fucking disturbing.
Okay,
but it's a similar thing. It's just like this is a human who has been downtrodden by society. It's almost like a thing where you kind of go, of course he's going to act this way when society and government has failed him. This is a mentally unwell person. This is what can happen, and that's what I think Gaspar does. He explores those themes in an oddly compassionate way because you kind of watch everyone in this film except for the two dickheads and go, I feel bad you've all been spiked.
Yeah.
You're doing awful things now. You've been spiked, but I feel bad for you. And Gaspar also like just kind of doesn't pull any punches. He goes, this is what can happen. Like, but if we don't, imagine if there was a world without mob mentality and those sorts of things, maybe these people wouldn't do it. And Gaspar kind of throws it back at you.
Yeah.
And says, like, I'm going to show you all this cooked shit that could happen. Yeah. And that's, I think, very much a staple of his filmmaking.
Yeah,
anyway.
It's very much holding up a mirror to ourselves.
Yeah,
and I
totally,
think that's, from what I've seen, that seems to be a common thread in a lot of French films.
Yeah.
Class is a big theme in a lot of French films.
Delicatessen.
And I think, obviously, coming from a country that's, they would chopping the heads off of the royalty. It makes sense that they have a bit of a chip on their shoulder about class.
Yes.
So I think that really comes through in their heart and their films even today.
Because Gaspar grew up in France. So he's Argentinian-born, but he grew up with French parents, did you say?
I believe so, yeah.
But I mean, like that's, you know what I mean? Like you're a product of your environment growing up. So it's great. But anything else we'd like to add to Climax before we score an elevator pitch?
Ooh.
Favorite scenes, performances. I'll happily take that one first. I think we just talked about it before, Josh, but Romain Guillemec. Yep. That was close enough. Sorry. Or Roman, who plays David.
Guillemec.
I thought he was really good.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think, like I said, I love the arc and the journey that his character goes on, and that he sort of starts out by being this sort of bit of a misogynistic douchebag. But by the end, he sort of becomes probably one of the bigger victims of the LSD.
Yep.
Not so much through his own actions, but through the actions of others. And I enjoyed his character's arc, and I thought his performance was really good, especially for a non-actor.
Yeah.
And as far as scenes go, it feels weird to call it a favorite scene. But when we were talking about, character getting beat up around the midpoint of the film, it's really hard to watch, but I think it really encapsulates what the film's trying to say and trying to do.
Yeah. That's a big jumping off point for them, the rest of the film. From that point,
That feels like where it turns from bad to really fucking
to really bad.
Yeah. Look, I sort of mentioned it before as well. The non-actors, definitely Kitty and Romain. Yep. I think they have great screen presence, especially for non-actors.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and obviously we sort of said it before as well, Sofia
Boutella.
She is really, really good in this.
Considering her outbreak lead role or breaking out lead role was a silent role in Kingsman.
Oh, okay.
Because she plays the one with the sword legs.
Yeah. Oh, yes, of course she
Kingsman,
does.
So you know what I mean? So, to see how far she's come as an actress as well is quite incredible. Like, she's great in this film. So,
favorite scene, I mean, I probably can't go past the 2 dance numbers.
Yeah.
The opening dance is, a few times have just watched that.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
You honestly could.
Yeah.
You could put Climax on and turn it off after 25 minutes.
Yeah, if you don't want to get fucked up.
They all went happily after everyone.
And a lovely little after party. Everyone went home.
Yeah, that's right. And the other dance scene from above is I think really good, well done.
Really well done.
Yeah, so, yep.
I'm going with Sohaila Yacoub, who is the other actress in the film. I feel like we're being very quiet about her character, so if you are good at connecting dots, you may put together that she is part of some of the most intense scenes of the film. She is the one who screams.
Yes.
I think she brings this. I was immediately sort of engaged by her at the start because there's something off-putting about the way she's acting around certain things. But then as her story progresses and people turn on her pretty quickly, the fear in her performance, I was like, oh shit. I was like, that to me was just, I was so disturbed for her as well. So I think she's incredible. The dance scenes are amazing as well, but I actually quite love the final shots.
Yeah, I like the final.
It's just a shot of literally where everyone is at the end.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a really nice way to end the film.
It's a great way to wrap it up.
It basically just,
I just love those shots.
We get to the morning after and it's like, all right, here's where everyone is. Here's where everyone's at.
We've alluded to it, like, especially being a horror film, is like, but it's like you see who's dead and you see who's alive and you see who's actually gone home to be able to fuck someone. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's quite incredible. So, like, and just that they're all these bird's eye shots from Gaspar, like we're just, watching over, and I think that's a really fantastic way to wrap up the film, and I quite enjoyed that moment.
One thing that did make me chuckle in a slightly morbid way, and this is a slight spoiler, but I don't think it's going to affect your viewing of the film at all, is Omar, who we talked about earlier, the teetotaler. He's the first person accused of spiking the sangria, and he gets thrown outside. And it's in the middle of like nowhere, in the middle of winter, and it's like you can see it's like snowing and freezing cold outside. And at the end of the film, I was like, oh man, Omar like got a raw deal. Like he got chucked out and accused of spiking everyone, but like he managed to avoid all of this chaos.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to Omar dead in the snow.
You're like, oh shit. That's
froze to death outside. It's like, okay.
You're kind of like, that's where he is. Poor Omar.
So here's me thinking like, oh wow, he dodged a bullet there. No.
Alrighty, Josh, do you want to elevator pitch this one to wrap up the show?
Okay.
Good luck.
You like fucked up shit?
Yeah, look, Gaspar Noé, I think he is out there to shock. But if you can handle that, I think, and even if you've seen his other films, he never really does anything similar. He has, like we've spoken about, he has similar themes, but they're all very different concepts, his films. I think this one is probably the easiest one for people. It's probably the most accessible.
It's probably why it's the best reviewed, to be honest.
Yeah. Even though it takes you on this horrific ride, it's anxiety-inducing, like, Uncut Gems, or it has that kind of building, the one-shot scene. I just think he is an incredible filmmaker.
Yeah, he is.
I really do think he's one for anyone to watch if you can
stomach it.
Yeah.
It's a very apt way to end that conversation. Your star rating.
Yes. So I'd forgotten what I gave it the first time, but when I looked back, I'd given it 4 stars.
Okay.
But I would give it 4.5 now.
Ooh, very good.
It's gone up. I can see myself watching this more times.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, especially after the second watch.
Cooked, Josh. You're fucked in the
Yeah,
head.
totally. So 4.5 for me.
Kieran?
Things you have to do to get off when you get to that age.
I was like, when you've completed internet pornography, where do you go next?
Because the next night I then watched Love.
You watched Love? You're like, well, that's the
Which
next
interesting, very quickly.
Yeah.
Because that was critically did not do well, Love.
Yeah.
But I remember giving it 4 stars.
Okay.
Rewatched it and I would give it 3 to 3.5.
Okay.
Like the second time.
It's a bit too pretentious. Probably isn't the right word, but it's a bit too self-indulgent.
There's not a lot
maybe.
of story there. It's
porn.
it is. Yeah, it is porn.
It's
It is porn, basically. Yeah.
From what I've read and seen of Love, it's basically just like if you like the concept but don't just want to watch 2 hours of straight up pornography, just watch The Dreamers. Like the Bernardo
Yeah,
Bertolucci
and
film.
I'm going to watch that soon. That's come onto Mubi.
Oh, very nice.
I
soon.
watched that quite a few years ago now, but I remember absolutely loving it. It was when I was on like a little Michael Pitt binge.
I like Michael Pitt.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Apparently an absolute dick to work with, but it's why he got kicked off of Hannibal.
Interesting.
And supposedly Boardwalk Empire as well. He's just
Okay.
awful to work with. But I think he's a phenomenal actor.
Yeah.
Correlation. But the Dreamers is a great film,
Yeah.
and I think the premise sounds very similar to
Yeah,
Love,
yeah.
but with actual plot and substance.
Yeah.
Star rating, I went 3.5.
Yep.
I think that opening dance number is worth half a star alone. It's it's awesome.
Yeah.
Even as someone, I find dance pretty boring in general. Like I constantly tease people who are into dance by saying it's like the lowest art form.
Wow. Shit.
And I don't know how much of that is tongue in cheek and how much of that I actually believe.
I do not agree with this statement.
Yeah. The views of Kieran are not reflective of the entire podcast. Yeah.
It's on the DVD commentary.
That's it.
But like dance, I just find pretty boring in general. Like I get nothing from it, and I've seen good dance, and it just doesn't do much for me. But this, I was like, I could not look away.
Yeah,
it's so engaging, and you're just sort of really glued to the screen. And I think because they're just the way Gaspar moves the camera and the way the actors and the dancers move and the moves they do, it's just all you get really sucked into it.
Yep.
And I really love that. And I think that opening scene, you really could just watch that first 15 minutes on its own and just be like, damn, what a cool extended music video almost, for a dance number. But I think, I have issues with probably that it is really self-indulgent. And even if that is Gaspar as a filmmaker, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, we get it. You know how to turn the camera upside down or suspend it from the ceiling.
And don't worry, he's aware of that too.
Yeah.
He's intentionally trying to provoke you. Yeah.
Like, I think the issues with the film are intentional, but I don't think that makes them not flaws.
Yeah. Totally.
And I think, had it had actual experienced actors instead of dancers, if you taught actors to dance instead of dancers to act, might have been a bit better. Yeah. If you'd had a script and not maybe let everyone freeball it for 90 minutes, might have been a bit better.
Yeah.
But that being said, I could see myself rewatching this and it either going up to a 4 or going down to a 3. I think it could go either way.
Yeah.
I think I could get more. I think I could get more out of it on a second watch.
If you fall in love with dance in the next time, or if
you shit talking.
Yeah, I think that with all these films, you'll have different reactions to every time you watch them.
Totally,
I really do. Yeah.
I'm a 3.5 as well. For almost for the exact same reasons. Visually amazing. The dance is great. I like most of the performances. The story I just felt was a little too thin for me. Those two actors.
Dropped at a star.
They really dropped it for me.
They're going to be listening to this and be like, fuck this guy.
But hey, I mean, don't improvise.
In the ass.
Don't improvise about rape. How about that? So
it's not hard, guys.
It's not that tough. But I feel like I actually do feel like if that middle 15 minutes was tightened a little bit and exactly what Kieran said, if it maybe wasn't non-actors given the chance to improvise and it was just a little bit tighter, this could easily be a 4-star movie for me. But I think it's the style is over the substance, but the substance isn't bad.
Yeah.
Unless it's LSD and sangria, then it is bad.
I mean, to people who haven't seen it, don't watch this for a storyline.
No.
As such,
I wouldn't actually introduce this as a Gaspar film. I would actually say start at the worst and go Irreversible, because that to me gives you the best inclination of like all of Gaspar's greatest hits is the wrong way of saying it, but like everything that happens or his style of filmmaking and writing and creating stories is apparent in Irreversible, and then you see different elements of it pop up then in his other films. Yeah. So I personally wouldn't say this would be the intro to Gaspar. I would, but in saying that, it is his most accessible film in regards to content. So there's a bit of a dichotomy there.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of awful shit that happens on screen.
But
compared to his other films, it's not as confronting.
No.
So I think if you haven't seen a Gaspar Noé film before and you want to start somewhere, it's not the worst place to start.
No, that's absolutely correct. Yeah.
And I think, as you said, you're not going into it for the plot or the characters. The plot can pretty much be summed up in the synopsis. A group of dancers have a party, someone spiked the sangria with LSD, and they all turn feral.
Yeah.
That's the story.
That's it. That's all you need to know. Yeah. That's what you say.
If that sounds interesting to you and you're not squeamish, give it a watch.
People love it.
100%. Just an interesting little tidbit that I'm sure we've all read, but for those in the audience, this is based very loosely on a real story. So there was an incident in the 90s when the film is set involving a French dance troupe. That's a mouthful. Who did have their drinks spiked with drugs, but obviously none of the aftermath of this film happened in real life. Yeah. But that was an inspiration for the film. And I think as well, this is probably the first experimental art house, call it what you want, film that we've done on the show.
Probably, yeah.
Like Close Up gets a bit experimental in its presentation.
It's funny, you would probably argue that the most experimental movie we've done outside of that is probably Delicatessen.
Yeah, true.
Just with its very, that dystopian feel. Like we've done a lot of just very grounded stories, or even when we did All Quiet, like it's a war film, but it's like a grounded, it's all about the troops on the ground rather than so it's kind of interesting. Yeah, this is our venture into that more very avant-garde experimental sort of shit. Yeah.
And I think if we were going to have any director take us into that territory, Gaspar is the one to do it.
Shout out Gaspar. Well, that was Climax for that 1 Inch Barrier, our March episode. And you might think, oh, God damn it, I got to wait till April to watch another episode of that 1 Inch Barrier. I just want to hear more.
Let yourself be known.
But you know what? Yeah, let us know. But also, secondly, if you are that person, then we've got a fun little surprise coming up here. And I think we'll lead into it by saying that we've made the decision as a group, as a podcast, that we're going to branch out and we're going to create our own channel for that 1 Inch Barrier and our own social media for that 1 Inch Barrier. I think the show obviously has done well over the last year. We're still doing it. We don't hate each other. Generally a good sign that the podcast will continue. And we figured, why not, give it its own legs and try its own thing, just not under, a generic umbrella of Nick's Flick Six content, because it's not just my podcast. It's all of our podcasts. We all have very, equal interest and control in how we want to run it. So
we all just got sick of pumping up Nick's subscribers numbers. Is basically it.
My plan worked for a year. But it makes complete sense because obviously a lot of the other content I do is so different to what we do. And this is absolutely its own beast and its own thing. So I think it's going to I'm very interested to see how it goes. So this will probably be the last episode on the Nick's Flick Fix channel, but it will be going over to that 1 Inch Barrier, its own thing. But we're going to kick off, I guess, so to say, that 1 Inch Barrier's new Instagram and new YouTube with a very special, I'm going to call it your creation. You pitched it to us. So do you want to let the listeners know what they can expect on the new and improved, brand new, that 1 Inch Barrier?
Are we giving away the full thing?
I reckon we do. We'll get them excited.
All right. So
this is the climax.
This is the real climax. The real climax was the friends we made along the way.
I was like, LSD
So we've talked about this individual a lot on the show. I think he would probably be one of all of our favorite actors and probably a lot of people's favorite actors, especially their favorite foreign actor, actor from a country outside of an English speaking country. language.
Yep.
Words.
That's all right.
Yep.
This is the podcast to do it on, so don't worry.
Yeah. We're like an hour into this, so
Just put some subtitles.
Yeah. Just warmed up.
just like gibberish. It's a subtitle.
Incoherent English.
But an actor that we all love and a lot of people love, Mads Mikkelsen.
Yes.
Our favorite Dane.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Hideo Kojima's man crush. And we thought we haven't done a Mads film yet.
Shockingly, to be honest.
I think we've sort of thought about it. We've teetered around the edge of a few, but I thought, why not? We're going to move over to these new socials and these new platforms. Let's kind of re-kick off that 1 inch barrier with a bit of March Madness.
I love it. I love that name so much.
So
March
we're
Madness.
going to be covering 3 Mads Mikkelsen films in the month of March.
Yes.
Every Monday. So the first Monday of the month, you're going to get this episode. You'll be listening to this episode on the first Monday of the month, Climax.
Yep.
And then each Monday after that, we're going to be releasing a slightly shorter but still pretty lengthy episode covering a different Mads Mikkelsen film. We won't say what those films are. We're going to leave that as a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, we'll surprise that. But
obviously, they're going to be, we're not going to be doing Casino Royale.
No, they are
Rogue One.
In the vein of the show, they are still international cinema films.
Yep.
But yeah, like Kieran was saying, the focus of the conversation will be about Mads.
Yep.
Yeah,
The Mads
less
we
about
love.
Danish cinema. It's just going to be, 3 episodes of us talking about how
It's
much
going
we
to be a
love
mad
Mads
circle
Mikkelsen.
jerk for 3 episodes.
And if that sounds fun to you, come along. Literally.
Yeah, literally. So be on the watch out for that. But if you go into the show notes, you'll see all of our socials and our letterbox and stuff. We will be promoting the fact that the new channel will be coming up. The new Instagram page will be coming up. You'll get to see what we're watching on that Instagram. There'll be reels from the episodes, just like we've been doing on our own socials. But it's a brand new home. It's a nice central home for the podcast, for the videos, for everything that we do, with some fun facts about the film as well, some interesting trivia that you might not know. So we're excited. We're really excited to branch this and to branch out for this and kick this off. So, and March Madness is the best way to start that, I think, absolutely. So that'll be all through March to launch the new channel, and then we will have our April episode, which is Mr. Kieran Griffiths' pick. We're circling back around to you. What are we going to be talking about
more
in April?
You love it.
I do. I listen to the sound of myself too much. We've teased this quite a bit, so this probably won't be too much of a surprise, especially for you two. But for April, for my episode, we're going to be going back to 2011, and we're going to a country we've not been to before. We're going to Indonesia.
Oh, I know what we're doing.
And we're going to be talking about The Raid.
Oh, nice.
What a film.
Nice.
Which is a Indonesian martial arts action movie.
Holy shit,
It's
man.
basically Asian John Wick, but with more punching instead of guns.
Oh,
and it fucking rocks.
It's like one of the best action films ever made.
So there's probably not going to be too many surprises in terms of our scores for this one. But I think it's going to make an interesting discussion.
Yep.
Fuck yeah.
Nice pick.
The Raid is great.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be in April, but before then, March Madness. Like I said, all of our socials are in the description below. You can find us on Instagram, Letterboxd, wherever we really are. I think that's really it, to be honest.
Where are we?
We're not really hiding
Where
from
are
you.
we?
And make sure you follow that 1 inch barrier Instagram page. Subscribe to the new YouTube channel. It'll all be up by the time this episode it comes out. By the time you're listening to it. But thank you all for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See you next time, guys. Don't drink any sangria.